The sun had just started to set, painting the quiet suburban street in shades of orange and pink. The neighborhood was peaceful, lined with small houses that had neat lawns and flower gardens. Birds were returning to their nests, and the distant hum of cars on the main road was the only sign of movement. Among these houses, one stood out not for its size or luxury, but for the sense of care and warmth that seemed to surround it. This was where she lived, a woman known in her community as strong, independent, and incredibly kind. She had built her life carefully, carving out a space that felt safe and comfortable, and she was proud of every corner of it. Her days were busy with work, running errands and helping neighbors whenever they needed. She had grown up learning to be self-reliant, and it showed in the way she moved through life, calm, confident, and alert. One of the most important parts of her life was her dog, a large, muscular animal with a thick coat and sharp eyes. He wasn't just a pet. He was her companion, her protector, and a loyal friend who had been with her through thick and thin. They had a bond that went beyond words. She trusted him with her life, and he seemed to understand every mood, every warning, and every sign of danger around her. As evening turned into night, she returned from her job, tired but content. She let her dog out into the yard for a quick run and then went inside, locking the doors behind her. The house smelled of freshly cooked food and faint traces of the lavender she liked to burn in the living room. Everything seemed normal, peaceful. She poured herself a cup of tea and sat on the couch, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the floorboards. Her dog lay at her feet, alert but relaxed, his ears twitching at every sound. Meanwhile, just a few blocks away, a small gang of local men were gathering in an old, run-down garage. They had been drinking and joking, talking about how they could get some quick money. One of them had noticed her house before, thinking it looked like an easy target. They didn't know much about her, only that she lived alone. Fueled by arrogance and racism, they convinced themselves it would be simple. They didn't consider the possibility that the woman might be stronger, smarter, or more prepared than they imagined. They didn't think about her dog either. In their minds, it was just another house, just another job that would give them some quick cash. Their planning was sloppy, filled with bravado and underestimation. As the night deepened, the woman prepared for bed. She double-checked the locks and dimmed the lights. Her dog followed her around the house, tail low but alert. Something in the air felt off, though she couldn't quite place it. She had learned to trust her instincts over the years, and her instincts were tingling. She noticed the slight rustle outside, the faint shadows moving past the windows, but she didn't panic. Instead, she quietly walked to the living room, where her dog was already watching the windows like a guardian. She didn't make a sound. She knew she had to be smart, cautious, and ready. Back in the garage, the gang finished their preparations. They had masks, gloves, and a crowbar. One of them, the so-called leader, was nervous but tried to cover it with confidence. They didn't plan to hurt anyone if they didn't have to. They just wanted money and thought it would be easy. Underestimating the woman and her dog was the first mistake they would make. They drove slowly down the quiet streets, checking their surroundings. Everything was dark except for the occasional streetlight. When they reached her house, they parked a block away to avoid being seen. They crept forward, thinking about how quickly they could get in and out. They had no idea that they were about to encounter something they had never faced before. The woman, sensing movement outside, felt a chill run down her spine. Her dog's ears twitched. His body stiffened. He had detected the strangers before she even saw them clearly. She whispered to him softly, reassuring him but also signaling that she was ready to act if necessary. The gang reached the side of the house, moving with a mixture of caution and overconfidence. One of them tested the back door, expecting it to be unlocked or easy to force open. That's when her dog let out a low, deep growl. The sound was not threatening in a playful way. It was serious, loud, and unmistakable. The men froze, unsure what to do. They had never encountered a dog like this before. It wasn't a pet that barked occasionally. It was a protector, fully aware of the danger. The growl grew louder as the men inched closer. She stayed silent, watching them from behind the curtains, feeling a mixture of fear and calm. She knew the dog would not let anything happen to her, and she trusted him completely. The leader of the gang finally tried to shrug it off, laughing nervously. He whispered to the others to keep moving, insisting it was just a dog. They approached again, but the dog barked, loud and fierce, a warning that could not be ignored. The men hesitated, feeling the first flickers of doubt. Their plan was supposed to be simple, but now it seemed unpredictable. The dog's loyalty and courage were already shaking their confidence, and they hadn't even entered the house yet. Inside, the woman moved silently toward the bedroom, planning her next steps. She didn't want confrontation if she could avoid it, but she was prepared. She kept one eye on the dog and the other on the front windows. She could see shadows moving, hear the nervous murmurs of the gang outside. Her heart beat steadily, not with panic but with focus. She knew that fear would not help her. Her strength and quick thinking were her best weapons, along with the dog who would never leave her side. The night stretched on, tense and uncertain. Every moment felt longer, filled with anticipation. Outside, the gang debated what to do next. Inside, she planned quietly, thinking about the best way to protect herself and her home. The dog moved between her and the doors, alert to every sound, every movement. It was clear that this night would not go as the gang had imagined. They had underestimated both her courage and the loyalty of her dog, and they were about to learn that neither could be taken lightly. She remembered lessons from her past, how preparation, awareness, and courage could turn a dangerous situation into a story of survival. She whispered to her dog, stroking his head and calming herself at the same time. Together, they formed a silent team, ready to face whatever came next. Outside, the gang remained unaware that their plan was already failing. They were about to encounter a reality they had not prepared for, and the night was only beginning. Every rustle, every shadow, every quiet sound added to the tension, and she knew that soon they would have to make a choice. Leave or face the consequences of underestimating her and her dog. The house, calm on the surface, was full of energy, tension, and readiness. She sipped her tea, listening, feeling, and watching. The dog growled softly, his body a shield of protection, and somewhere in the darkness the gang hesitated, unaware that the woman they had targeted was far from an easy mark, and that the loyalty of a faithful dog could change everything in an instant. The night felt heavier now, the quiet street masking the tension that was building just outside the house. The gang had paused, unsure whether to continue or retreat. The growls and low barks from the dog were persistent, a constant reminder that this was not going to be easy. They whispered among themselves, trying to reassure one another, but every sound seemed to make the dog more alert. The woman remained calm, crouched near the bedroom doorway, her eyes on the windows and doors, listening to every sound. She had grown up in situations where thinking quickly and staying composed could make the difference between safety and danger. Tonight, those lessons mattered more than ever. One of the gang members, emboldened by fearlessness or foolishness, decided to test the dog. He threw a small stick near the back door to see if the dog would react. The dog didn't chase it. Instead, he growled deeper, his body low and tense. The man froze, suddenly aware that this dog was not playful. The leader gestured to move forward, trying to keep control, but the hesitation had spread through the group. They had underestimated how much instinct and loyalty could protect a home, and their confidence was starting to crumble. Inside the house, the woman quietly picked up her phone, keeping one hand free to grab a household object if needed. She had called the police earlier when she noticed shadows moving around her property. Explaining the situation calmly and clearly, now she focused on keeping herself and her dog safe while waiting for help. Her heart was steady, but her senses were sharp. Every creak, every whisper, every shuffle from outside was catalogued in her mind. She knew that panic would only make mistakes more likely. The gang tried another approach, moving closer to the house, stepping cautiously to avoid noise. One of them knocked on the door, pretending to be lost or in need of help. The woman did not respond. She kept her gaze on the door, her dog positioned between them and the entry point. When the knocking continued, the dog barked, a loud, threatening sound that echoed down the street. The neighbors, mostly asleep, were now awake, listening to the commotion. The gang looked at each other nervously, their plan unraveling with every sound. They decided to try a window, thinking it might be an easier entry. As they approached, the woman moved quietly to another vantage point, ready to react. The dog, sensing the movement, positioned himself near the window. His growl became a low rumble, warning the intruders to stay away. One of the gang members reached for the window latch, thinking the dog would not act. In a flash, the dog lunged, not in a wild frenzy but with precise timing, knocking the man back and causing him to stumble. The other members shouted in surprise, realizing that the dog was trained, alert, and completely dedicated to protecting his owner. The woman used this moment to take control. She called out to the gang calmly, telling them to leave before things got worse. Her voice was firm, commanding attention, carrying the weight of authority that comes from confidence and courage. They hesitated, unsure if she had backup or what else the house contained. Every instinct told them that this was not going as planned. They were dealing with more than just a woman alone. They were facing intelligence, preparation, and loyalty that they had not considered. The dog remained by her side, growling softly but watching everything carefully. He would not leave her, and the gang could see it in his stance. It was clear that he was ready to act at the slightest provocation. The leader of the gang yelled in frustration, trying to rally his team. He shouted threats, attempting to scare the woman, but his words fell flat. Her composure was unshaken, her movements controlled. She picked up a broom, leaning on it, not in panic but in readiness, showing that she could defend herself if necessary. Outside, the neighbors were now paying closer attention. Lights turned on in several houses and doors opened as people checked what was happening. The gang noticed the increased attention and began to worry. They whispered urgently, debating whether to retreat. Their plan had been simple, relying on underestimating both the woman and her dog. But now, faced with unexpected resistance and attention, they felt trapped and exposed. Fear began to replace their earlier arrogance. The woman kept her phone close, ready to update the police on the situation. She spoke softly to the dog, who responded with a gentle nuzzle, reassuring her as much as she reassured him. They were a team, understanding each other without needing words. Every decision she made considered not just her safety, but the dog's as well. She did not want him hurt, and she trusted that he would never allow anyone to get close enough to harm her. The gang decided to make one final attempt at intimidation, shouting racial slurs and threats. The woman did not flinch. She stood tall, her voice steady as she told them to leave immediately. The dog barked loudly, reinforcing the warning. One of the gang members reached toward the door again, and the dog reacted instantly, moving with speed and precision, forcing the man to stumble back. Panic set in among them. They were not prepared for this resistance, for a protector so devoted and a woman so composed under pressure. Realizing that the situation was slipping out of their control, the gang began retreating, stumbling over each other in their haste. The woman watched carefully, making sure they left before lowering her guard. The dog followed their movements, growling softly as they disappeared into the night. It was over for now, but she knew vigilance was still necessary. The adrenaline coursing through her veins was balanced by a clear mind, analyzing what had happened and preparing for the next steps. The police arrived shortly after, guided by her earlier call. She explained everything calmly, pointing out where the gang had approached and describing their actions. The officers were impressed by her composure and the dog's disciplined response. They noted the evidence left behind and began investigating, confident that the gang would be held accountable. The woman stayed with her dog, grateful for his protection and loyalty, knowing that without him, the night could have ended very differently. Neighbors came forward, offering support and expressing admiration for her bravery. The story spread quietly through the community, highlighting the courage, intelligence, and partnership between the woman and her dog. She remained humble, focused on ensuring safety and understanding the importance of preparedness. Her actions, guided by instinct, training, and careful planning, had prevented a dangerous situation from escalating. As the night returned to a quieter rhythm, she reflected on what had happened. She knew that danger could come unexpectedly, and the loyalty of those we trust is invaluable. Her dog settled beside her, finally relaxed while she cleaned up small signs of the disturbance. The house was still hers, still safe, and the bond between them had proven unbreakable. It was a reminder that courage does not always mean confrontation. Sometimes it is about preparation, awareness, and unwavering loyalty that protects what matters most. The night had tested her in ways she had not expected, but together she and her dog had proven that strength, intelligence, and loyalty could overcome fear and intimidation. They were a team, ready for whatever challenges might come next. The next morning, the woman woke to a bright, calm day, but the events of the night before lingered in her mind. She stretched, feeling the tension in her muscles slowly ease, and glanced at her dog, who was already up, alert, and ready for the day. The bond they shared was unspoken but deep. The events of last night had strengthened it even more. She could see the trust in his eyes and knew he would always be ready to protect her, no matter the danger. After breakfast, she went outside to inspect her property. Nothing seemed damaged. Thanks to the dog's vigilance and her quick action during the attempted break-in, she walked carefully around the yard, making notes of small things to improve security. Like additional lighting and locking mechanisms, she didn't feel defeated. She felt empowered. The previous night had tested her courage and planning, but it had also shown her just how much she could rely on her instincts and the loyalty of those closest to her. Meanwhile, news of the attempted robbery had spread through the neighborhood. People who had been awake and witnessed shadows or heard the commotion were talking among themselves. Some were shocked at the audacity of the gang, and others expressed relief that no one was hurt. Word reached the local police station as well, and the officers who had responded last night had begun investigating the gang. Evidence left behind, such as footprints and discarded items, helped them identify suspects. It became clear that the gang had not anticipated encountering anyone so prepared and resilient. Back at her home, she spent part of the morning reinforcing her sense of safety. She rearranged furniture in a way that created clear pathways and reduced blind spots, ensuring her dog could move freely and stay near her if needed. She added small but effective security measures like motion sensors and an alert system she could monitor from her phone. She understood that being prepared was just as important as courage, and she approached these tasks with calm determination rather than fear. Her dog remained by her side through every task, moving with precision and attentiveness. He had already proven himself as a protector, but he continued to act as her companion, sharing the day quietly and staying alert to the surroundings. Neighbors passing by noticed their interaction, the way they moved in harmony and the unspoken trust that existed between them. It was clear that this was more than just a pet. It was a partnership built on loyalty and understanding. As the afternoon came, the woman decided to visit the local police station to give a more detailed statement. She walked calmly, her dog at her side, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who had faced danger and come through it intact. The officers welcomed her, impressed by her composure. She recounted every detail, from the initial observation of shadows outside her home, to the gang's attempts at intimidation and the dog's precise actions. Her clarity and focus made it easier for the police to understand the events and prioritize their investigation. The officers promised to follow up, and she returned home, feeling satisfied that her cooperation could help bring the gang to justice. She spent the rest of the day reflecting on what had happened, considering ways to strengthen her awareness and preparedness. The experience had been frightening, but it also revealed her own strength and the extraordinary loyalty of her companion. In the neighborhood, discussions of the incident continued quietly but purposefully. People began to recognize her bravery and the dog's protective instincts. Some even commented on how the gang had underestimated not only her courage, but the bond she shared with her dog. This recognition was not about boasting. It was about admiration for the strength, intelligence, and loyalty that had prevented a dangerous situation from escalating. Later in the day, she spent time training her dog with new exercises and commands, reinforcing his skills and readiness. She knew that preparedness was ongoing, not a one-time event. Each session strengthened their connection and ensured that both of them would respond effectively if danger ever returned. It was a calm, intentional process filled with trust and mutual respect. As evening approached, she relaxed in her living room, watching the sun set, and reflecting on the events of the past day. She felt a deep sense of pride in herself and her companion. The night had tested her in ways she had never imagined, and she had met every challenge with focus, courage, and strategy. Her dog lay nearby, content but alert, ready to respond if needed. The bond between them had been tested and proven unbreakable. The community continued to support her quietly, offering assistance and expressing their admiration without making her feel singled out. It was a subtle acknowledgement of the bravery displayed and the loyalty of her dog. She appreciated their support but remained grounded, knowing that the most important thing was maintaining her own awareness and preparedness. That night, the woman and her dog settled into a routine of vigilance and calm, knowing that the lessons from the previous night had strengthened them. She felt empowered, understanding that courage, intelligence, and loyalty could overcome fear and intimidation. Her dog's loyalty had been central to her survival, and she cherished the trust and protection he provided. Together, they had faced danger, learned from it, and emerged stronger and more confident, ready to face whatever challenges might come next. Days passed after the attempted robbery, and the neighborhood slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Yet the events of that night lingered in everyone's minds, and the woman remained vigilant. She had strengthened her home, installed extra lighting, and reviewed security measures to ensure she and her dog were as safe as possible. Every time she moved through the house, she did so with awareness, checking doors and windows and always keeping an eye on her loyal companion. The bond between them had deepened. She trusted him entirely, and he stayed alert to every sound and movement. The police continued their investigation. Evidence left behind by the gang, footprints, gloves, and other items, led them closer to identifying the culprits. Officers came by to take additional statements and to gather more information. She described everything carefully, recounting each moment with clarity and composure. Her calm and detailed approach impressed the officers, giving them confidence that they could build a strong case. She felt a sense of purpose in helping them, knowing that her efforts could prevent the gang from targeting anyone else. Meanwhile, the gang had begun to realize the consequences of underestimating their target. Word of their failed attempt spread through their network, and their confidence began to falter. They had expected an easy robbery, but instead had been met with courage, intelligence, and a fiercely loyal dog. Panic and frustration grew among them as they understood the mistakes they had made. Their arrogance had blinded them to the strength of the woman they tried to rob, and now they faced not only legal trouble but also embarrassment within their group. The woman focused on her daily life, refusing to be consumed by fear or anger. She continued her routine of work, household tasks, and time with her dog. She took walks, noting the neighborhood and staying aware of her surroundings, but never letting the memory of the gang control her actions. Her dog walked beside her, protective but calm, a symbol of loyalty and security. Together they moved through life with awareness and confidence, prepared for anything without being consumed by anxiety. One afternoon, she received a call from the police station. The officers informed her that they had located the gang and that the evidence collected from her property, combined with other information, would lead to charges. She felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that justice was beginning to take shape. It was not about revenge. It was about accountability. She had handled herself with courage and intelligence, and now the consequences for those who had underestimated her were becoming clear. The community's support grew stronger. Neighbors expressed their admiration and concern, offering help and checking in. Some had witnessed the commotion during the attempted robbery, while others had only heard about it later. Regardless, everyone recognized the bravery displayed and the exceptional loyalty of her dog. People were inspired not only by her courage but also by the partnership between her and her canine companion. It became a story of resilience, awareness, and trust that spread quietly but meaningfully through the neighborhood. As the investigation progressed, the woman took steps to reinforce her preparedness even further. She reviewed emergency plans, practiced safety drills, and ensured her dog was familiar with commands and routines that would protect them both. These measures were practical, not driven by fear, and they strengthened her confidence. She knew that the world could be unpredictable, and being ready was a way to maintain control and security. Her dog continued to be a central part of her life. Every action, from alerting her to sounds outside to staying close during walks, reinforced the bond of trust and loyalty. She often reflected on how much he had contributed to her safety, and she treated him with care and attention, understanding that their partnership was mutual. The dog's instincts and training had made the difference, and she never took that for granted. The gang's legal proceedings began shortly afterward. Officers presented the evidence collected from the scene, along with her detailed statements. Her composure and clear recounting of events made the process smoother. The gang members faced the consequences of their actions, understanding that their underestimation had led to both their failure and their legal accountability. The story of the attempted robbery and the woman's courage and her dog's loyalty became a point of reference for law enforcement and the neighborhood, demonstrating the importance of preparation, awareness, and integrity. Life slowly returned to normal, but the lessons remained. The woman continued to live with awareness, valuing her safety and the loyalty of her dog. She engaged with her community, sharing advice and encouragement without boasting, creating a subtle but lasting influence. Her actions had shown that courage and intelligence, paired with loyalty and preparedness, could turn a dangerous situation into a story of empowerment. Evenings were quiet again, with the sun setting over the calm neighborhood. She sat in her living room sipping tea while her dog rested at her feet, ears occasionally twitching at distant sounds. She felt a sense of peace and strength, knowing that she had faced danger, relied on her instincts, and come through intact. The partnership with her dog was unshakable, a reminder that loyalty and courage were powerful tools. Together, they had not only defended themselves but had inspired their community through their actions. The events of the past days left a lasting impression. The woman's composure, intelligence, and courage were admired, and the dog's unwavering loyalty became a symbol of protection and trust. The gang's failure and the subsequent legal consequences demonstrated the results of underestimating strength, preparation, and loyalty. The story continued to resonate quietly, serving as a reminder that courage and vigilance, paired with the loyalty of a trusted companion, could overcome intimidation and fear. Weeks had passed since the attempted robbery, but the memory of that night was still fresh for the woman and her dog. Life had gradually returned to normal, but the experience had left an indelible mark. She moved with the confidence of someone who had faced danger and emerged stronger. Her dog remained by her side, alert and loyal, a constant reminder of the bond that had kept them safe. They were not just living in the neighborhood. They had become a quiet symbol of courage and resilience. The legal proceedings against the gang progressed steadily. The evidence she and her dog had provided, along with other material collected by the police, created a strong case. The gang members faced charges that reflected the seriousness of their actions, and they quickly realized that underestimating the woman had far-reaching consequences. The courtroom process was intimidating, but she approached it with the same calm and intelligence that had guided her through the night of the attempted robbery. Her testimony was clear, composed, and precise, leaving no room for doubt about what had happened. Community members attended the proceedings to show support. Their presence was quiet but meaningful, a subtle acknowledgement of the bravery displayed by the woman and her dog. It wasn't about drawing attention or seeking praise. It was about recognition and solidarity. They admired her ability to stay composed under pressure and the way her dog had acted with unwavering loyalty. Together, they had faced a threat and had come through unscathed, turning a frightening situation into a story of empowerment and strength. The woman continued to strengthen her home and her routines. She added additional security measures not out of fear, but out of preparedness. She practiced emergency responses with her dog, reinforcing commands and reactions that ensured they were always ready for any situation. Her focus was on maintaining safety, awareness, and readiness, blending practicality with the confidence that came from knowing she could handle challenges as they arose. Her dog responded with intelligence and precision, showing that their bond was as much about trust as it was about protection. Neighbors continued to check in on her, offering assistance or just friendly conversation. They had seen how she had handled the danger and were inspired by her calm, measured approach. Many quietly reflected on how the dog's loyalty had played a pivotal role, demonstrating that courage and protection could come in many forms. It was a story that quietly circulated through the community, shared in conversation and observation, serving as a reminder of vigilance, awareness, and strength. One evening she sat on her porch, the sun casting long shadows across the quiet street. Her dog lay at her feet, ears twitching occasionally at distant sounds. She felt a sense of peace, knowing that the threats had been dealt with, and yet she remained vigilant. The experience had taught her lessons about preparedness, trust, and the strength that comes from facing challenges head-on. She understood that courage was not about fearlessness. It was about calm, thoughtful action when confronted with danger. The gang's presence in the neighborhood had disappeared, removed by legal action and the community's awareness. They had learned the hard way that arrogance and underestimation had consequences. Their failed attempt served as a cautionary tale for others who might consider preying on those they believed were weak. The woman's courage and the dog's loyalty had changed the dynamic, turning a potential victim into a powerful example of resilience and intelligence. Her daily life continued with work, interactions with neighbors, and time spent with her dog. She took walks, maintained her home, and engaged with her community, always mindful of the lessons she had learned. Each day reinforced the understanding that strength comes from awareness, preparedness, and the bonds of loyalty that support us. Her dog remained her constant companion, a guardian and friend who had proven that loyalty could protect and empower in ways words could not fully capture. In quiet moments, she reflected on how much she had learned from the experience. She recognized the courage she had displayed and the critical role her dog had played. She appreciated the calm, measured thinking that had guided her through the danger, understanding that fear could be managed with preparation and awareness. She also valued the support of her neighbors and the law enforcement officers, who had responded swiftly and effectively, reinforcing the idea that community and trust are essential in facing challenges. The story of the attempted robbery, and the woman's courage and her dog's loyalty, became a quiet legend in the neighborhood. It wasn't told with exaggeration or drama. It was shared with honesty and admiration, highlighting the strength, intelligence, and unwavering loyalty that had made the difference. People reflected on the importance of preparation, the power of calm action, and the role of trusted companions in overcoming threats. It was a story that reminded everyone that courage could be practical, strategic, and deeply human. As night fell, she settled into her routine, grateful for her safety and the companionship of her dog. The past weeks had tested her in ways she had never anticipated, and she had met every challenge with focus, courage, and awareness. The dog, lying quietly at her side, was a constant reminder of loyalty and protection, a living symbol of the bond that had kept her safe. They had faced danger together, and together they had emerged stronger, more confident, and more aware. In the end, it was not only about surviving the threat, it was about understanding the power of vigilance, the importance of loyalty, and the strength that comes from facing challenges with courage and intelligence. The woman and her dog had demonstrated that preparation, awareness, and mutual trust could turn a frightening situation into a story of empowerment, resilience, and human connection. Their experience became a quiet lesson for everyone around them, showing that strength, courage, and loyalty were forces to be respected and valued. And as the neighborhood slept peacefully, the woman and her dog rested, knowing they had faced danger and had triumphed together.